Hi folks, Cappy here. Welcome to Studio 7 channel, and today we're going to be painting this, which is a scene from a challenge that I just did in Australia. You've just seen two versions that I've done. You won't see me talking in the video because I was listening to music at that time. Somehow I wasn't able to do the commentary. So what we're going to do is the picture up at the top, and I'm going to show you the colors shortly that we're going to be using, working with a limited palette. I'm just faffing and getting some music playing on my laptop while doing the recording. This recording I'm doing from my phone. So let's just wait for that old guy in the in the video to get the colors sorted out. So I'm using the Moore method of painting here, for which I'm qualified as an instructor to teach. We've got ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, and titanium white, which I showed first. Sometimes use cad red, cad yellow, and a touch of burnt umber. So first step, using the Moore method of painting, we do a drawing or a sketch. The photograph is in the top left hand corner, and that is a scene in Australia, and I think it's called the Kenilworth Bluffs, but it's in the Kenilworth area in Australia. And so the first thing we do is we sketch in. Now what I've mixed up is a ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson, and I'm working on an A4 size canvas pad sheet, and we're just drawing in the mountain that you see in the background in the picture. So fixing up the shapes, putting the things in the correct place. There is you can't really see it on the video, in the top left hand corner of the picture or the photograph is there's a small mountain or hill just behind those trees that I'm drawing now. And yeah, so what I'm doing now is doing the sketch of the picture that you see there. Just got to make sure that everything gets put into the correct place. And sketching stroke blocking in the trees, the tree line that's in the background. You can just obviously draw the outline if you want to. I just like to fill in the area so I can more or less see where things are going. You can just, as I say, you can just do the outline. The actual focal point, which is a tad difficult to see, but if you look in right at the beginning of this video, you will see that the mountain has a particular spot on it with a small cliff face that is actually the feature of this painting. And you'll notice that the fence post closest to us is more or less in line, pointing in the direction of that cliff face. Now just mapping in the fence line. I do paint over it, but you can still see it in the undertone. So we're just getting, it's important to get the size and shape of these poles right in terms of perspective. Placement on the canvas in terms of composition is very important. So once we've done the drawing, we're going to go onto the blocking stage, which comes after I've done about 500 posts in the background. There's a fence line that runs along the back. There's one in the center as well. Just filling in a touch of detail into the field. I may or may not use it, and in this case some of it I did not use. Marking the area for trees. Now marking the area that is going to be the cliff face and the shadow. And just bear in mind that your drawing does not have to be perfect. It's the process that we are following. So that will be my sketch for the picture at the top, and we're going to move on to blocking in. The colors in order to establish aerial perspective. Aerial perspective creates depth in a painting, taking a 2D picture and making it into almost a three-dimensional picture. So what I'm doing now is I'm putting in the darks. When painting an object, you're going to essentially have three areas that you look at in terms of your paint that you apply. So for example, with regards to a tree, you're going to have a dark, a mid-tone and a highlight. Same applies to other objects as well, depending on where the sunlight is coming from, or the source of light. Doesn't have to be sunlight. The important thing here is to use mainly the corner of your brush, and don't keep your trees uniform. So the focus point for me is just above my brush where it is now. Those are going to be the cliffs. Therefore, we need to bring the bush line down so that we can observe that mountain in the background. I was hoping to make this video as short as possible. It turned out into an hour and 20 minutes long, just shy of an hour and 20 minutes long. But you get to see the process that I follow. We offer classes, workshops, and this is one of the projects that we present. There are a number of other projects as well. I do landscape and seascape. Also do still life, and I paint in a number of different mediums. So what I'm doing now is, you'll notice, yes, it's a purple color, purple mix. I have stepped back in value and it has become lighter. At this stage we're doing the blocking in, so we're not worrying about color now. This is establishing your value structure within the piece of work that you are doing in order to give it that aerial perspective. So I'm using the Montmartre acrylic paintbrush set, synthetic hairs, not bristle. The brushes are suitable for small paintings, although you can use it with a larger painting, but the brush set I use for smaller pieces of work. If I did this on an A3 size, I'd be using much bigger brushes. You can already see a step in the that the mountain looks further than the tree line, and that is due to the value. So the closer things get to you, the more color they will have as you go further away, so colors recede. So what I've started with is a green mix, also with titanium white in it. And it's important here to make sure that your brush strokes are done the correct way around. You don't want to be doing up and down strokes for a field that runs left to right. Same for a mountain area. Rock surface usually runs down, so you're going to want to be doing your brush strokes in a downward pattern in order to create the effects that you would see in a mountain. So just added a touch of red to the mix, alizarin crimson that is. Added that to the mix. As you come closer, the colors get warmer. So I've just added a touch extra white and yellow ochre to that area. I think what I mixed up next was not the sky, but a green, dark green for the trees. I may be mistaken because I'm watching the video again while doing this commentary. And if you've been watching my channel for a while, I do an as-is production. What you see is what you get. Good old WYSIWYG boy. And so now we go into detailing, although I haven't done the sky. I'm now moving into detailing, and I've mixed up a green tone, ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, and it's a pretty dark one that I've mixed up. Just using the corner of your brush and add the texture to the trees using the side of the brush, front side of the brush, in order to create the trees. You can use a fan brush for this as well, Depends on how much detail you wish to go into. I enjoy the impressionistic look, and there's some phenomenal artists out in the world today that do photorealism, and for me I prefer Impressionism. So what I've done is I now wanted my tree line, unlike in the photo, to take a step back, so I've added a touch of white to the green in order to get the trees to take a step back. You can already see that the trees are coming forward in terms of perspective, and you don't want to cover up all that purple / chromatic black. You want to leave enough open so that you have the shade and shadow spots visible. So working on the shapes of the trees as well, and this is where you use your color and brush angle and brush strokes to create shape within the tree. Even at this point I was pretty happy with what I did on the trees, but then I messed up on a little hill at the back. I did come back and fix it. Not the right value that I used there, or right color, because it's actually a yellow, more yellow green than it is that strong green that I put in there. What I am using as well, I have a spray bottle I don't actually spray onto the canvas like some artists do, because the moisture tends to stay in blobs on the page. I rather spray my paint in my palette, and I have a sealable palette from Magello, which is very handy. I know some people like to store their acrylics in the fridge. Not particularly recommended at all, but if you have this sealable container, it makes it a little bit better. Not much better, because all paint has fumes, and I'm sure you don't want to eat something that tastes like acrylic. Okay, now you'll notice that my colors are too close together in terms of the back mountain and the hill that is situated just behind the trees. And again on the back, I don't want to lose all that initial blocking in, so I'm pulling the brush down, allowing some of that to show through. It also adds to the texture of the mountain at the back, of course. And at this point you can also add to the shape of the mountain. I've basically done what I needed to do with regards to the photo when I finished doing my sketch. Rest is just a color reference, and the rest is me just doing my thing. Unless you're doing photorealism, there's no rule or regulation that says you must stick to the photograph, even in Impressionism. The area that I'm putting in now is actually the cliff face, and I'll do a bit more work on this, not just this little piece that you see here. So just a reminder that this is an A4 canvas pad. When I do demos or anything like that, I use the canvas pad for doing it. Of course, when it's finished, it can be framed and hung on the wall. Okay, so what I've done is I've used yellow ochre. It's been slightly lightened, and then I dirtied it a bit with the purple mix that I had. And now adding some foliage which is present on the mountain. Adding some foliage, so I've mixed up a green, and now inserting foliage onto the mountain. And there you just saw me using the magic finger paintbrush. Not recommended if you are using cadmium, not the hue, the actual cadmium paint. Not recommended touching. So if you can get a finger glove, I recommend using that. Preferably brushes, but a finger glove can also be used. Right. I pointed at the sky area, so we're going to use ultramarine blue and I'm using a 2-inch brush. I think it's a 2-inch brush. It's the biggest brush in Montmartre. It might be maybe 1.5-inch brush. To do that, I've added my ultramarine blue and now added titanium white to the mix. So the sky is going to be darker at the top and it will get down to the bottom. On the horizon line, it's going to be a lot lighter. I've also added retarder here so that I can get the mix done properly. Hence that sheen that you see just underneath the picture, that shiny spot, and using a bigger amount of paint. At this stage you can shape out your mountain, shape out the trees. That's the retarder I just showed you there. Make sure that it's an acrylic retarder and not something else. When you're using your paint, make sure that you buy, if you do use any mediums, make sure that it is for the specific paint or brand that you are using. Just making sure all the gaps are filled up. The thing with these canvas pads is that it's not, some of it's not of the best quality. That's why I use this for videos and demonstrations. Again, you can see the retarder inside on the left hand side, that shine that is coming through. And it's important to get the sky right. Yeah, I'm cutting into the tree just a tad so that you can get the shape of that. And at this point I was pretty happy. Just with regards to painting with fingers, you can also wear gloves if you so wish. My hands just get completely sopping wet inside gloves, so, and I don't really advocate using finger for painting. So I spent quite a bit of time trying to get that sky just right. And sometimes if you're doing clouds, you can get some really nice definition inside the application of the paint, and you can actually see specific shapes and then build those shapes up from there being no clouds to having clouds. In this case I didn't put any in. Rocks on a mountain can be done in a number of ways. It can be scraped out. You can use a palette knife to apply the paint. You can apply it using a credit card type card. Paintbrush, palette knife, or a credit card. So if you've never tried that before, have a go. It works on canvas, it works with watercolor, gouache, and acrylic. I don't do oil, so I've never tried it with oil paint, the scraping technique. I'm now building up some more highlights on these trees. Notice that the fence posts are still showing through. That becomes handy when you start doing the detailing of the foreground. I've really tried to focus on my trees in this in terms of texture. I'm just redoing that small hill behind the trees. Yeah. The mixing of greens, you need to practice that. Not always easy. Especially in a photograph that's got a lot of greens. You need to make sure that your dark, mid and highlight tones are doing exactly what they should be doing. Notice the tall tree is now looking like some kind of truck or something like that. I do come back and fix that up, I think. And now I'm applying grass. But what I try and do is leave some of that underpainting to come through. Brush strokes, very important, as I said before. Notice that I'm doing horizontal movements across the field. So you want a lighter color towards the back, and as you come closer to us, it's going to get warmer. Again, I've changed the brush stroke. So if you look in the photograph, you'll notice that it is pretty much a cut lawn or field on our side of the fence line. So brush strokes are coming towards us at an angle going out of the painting, and that's going to give us the line. Yeah, it looks a bit darker, but I do actually add some lighter tones to that. Going for the other side of the fence, left to right, horizontal strokes. You'll notice that some of that underpainting is still coming through. Still see a bit of that yellow. The fun thing about painting is seeing something develop before your eyes. If you apply the elements of art and the fundamentals, you will be able to create something that you can be very proud of. Adding in a darker tone into the mountain again. It's important to take note of where the light and sun is. And of course, that was a little mistook. Touch of mistake there. I had paint on my hand and then promptly plopped it in the middle of my field. Just warming up the green, adding a touch more yellow to it as well. If you have trouble with mixing colors, I recommend a color mixing course. I do teach that as well. We use a limited palette specifically for this reason, so that you learn how to mix your own colors and not use tube-based color all the time. Although I use a burnt umber here, which can be mixed from the primary colors, although I use a burnt umber, it just makes it a lot easier for me just to have that burnt umber. And I don't use much of that burnt umber, mainly for trees and things like that, or if I want a really dark brown or really dark color, I can use burnt umber and ultramarine blue to give me that really dark chromatic black. I tend to stay away from that kind of thing unless I want to finish something really quickly. So in this case I've used not a lot of it, and I'm using it mainly for doing the posts and fencing that we see in this piece. So building up the fence posts now. Now using, I think this is a number 1 liner from the set, and I'm putting in some tree trunks. If you take the size of this painting, it does not lend itself to a large number of tree trunks, so I restricted myself to, I think, 2 or 3 main trunks. So as I said, I think this is a number 1 liner from the set that I use. You can still see the purple color in the mountain at the back, which is quite nice, quite a nice effect. I didn't even notice it until after the video was done, and of course now I'm commenting after the video had been made. That was a little flagpole, well, I assume flagpole, and now just adding some more highlights to the fence posts in the foreground. Just remember again that you've got a light side and a dark side and a mid-tone. So I'm using a mix of titanium white mixed with the brown. I've also graded it up a bit. It's important to make sure that you leave, again, even in these small elements, make sure that you leave a dark side as well. So you've got your shadow and sunlit side. The important thing in your composition is making sure that your elements are in the correct place. Objects are where they should be. Size-wise, they are relative to other objects. As you see with the one tree, well, the two big trees, they are taller than the mountain. Well, that creates the idea that the trees are closer than the mountain is. So not only color and value, but also placement of the objects. Okay, so just flicking up some grass now around the base of these fence poles. Getting in that line separation between the left and right hand side field. Just using the brush to flick up some long grass. Also use it to add additional grass, darker shades in that field by using a darker color. I made a comment somewhere else that in this painting I've made this into a golf course, and it looks like a fairway running down towards the back L-shaped leg. And you can just imagine a flag on the green between the two sets of trees in an L-shaped dog leg going towards the rocky area on the mountain. And there we see the magic finger painting. Sometimes that finger brush is very, very important. Sometimes, not all the time. Just adding some shadow to separate the three fields again. And there are actually two fields lying next to one another, and then this piece that comes past us in the front as well. So three fields all together in this picture. So adding shadow to create that line where there may be slightly longer grasses. So I'm not familiar with this area in Australia at all, not having been there. So one thing that is important is that you study up on the area, and I did so on the internet. Found it to be a very interesting history revolving around this area, and it is important to find out more about the subject that you're painting. Obviously better if you have an intimate knowledge of where you come from or the place you may have been there. Would be a lot better than just painting something that you actually physically haven't seen or been to. Okay, so I'm just establishing the lines on that flag post in the background. we're going to add in a fence, a couple of fence posts at the back, and a gate. Okay, so that was the gate that was added, and we need some more fence posts too. In this step 3, you really slow down and focus on getting the detail right. But if step 1 and step 2 are not correct, you're going to have problems fixing it in this stage. So it's always best to make sure that you have fixed up any errors in the first 2. Well, in actually the second step. So the first step is your drawing. And in your drawing, you need to make sure that everything is placed in the correct place. There's some really nice tones that were coming through on this, on the picture in the trees and on the mountain as well. But I'm quite happy about. If you're wondering what I've used around the edges of my canvas, that is brown paper packaging tape. It's not as sticky as some of the other stuff that I've used. Masking tape, for example, is quite sticky. I just need to find something a little bit thinner though, because this is actually used for closing up a box. Basically for closing up a box that you're not going to move around. So it's not a really durable kind of tape, but you can pull it off easily and it doesn't damage your paper at all. Well, in this case, canvas doesn't damage the canvas. Right, at this point I felt the trees on this side really needed to be lifted up because they were blending too much into that back area. And so I started applying some more paint. And it's important with acrylics, you must make sure that your first layers are dry. Don't try and work into a wet layer unless you're looking for a specific purpose of some kind of mixing, like I did with the sky. Now what I'm doing, I've taken and I've mixed up some more of that yellow ochre / brown with a bit of red and white, and I'm using a palette knife to apply texture to that rocky area of the cliff face. And because I'm working on a small canvas, I'm using the smallest palette knife that I have available. Using my liner brush, just emphasizing that shadow, a nice dark value. And always remember, nothing is cast in stone. It's how you see something in terms of creating your composition. The important thing is get the elements and your fundamentals right. Elements of line, shape, form, texture, your color, your values. Make sure that those are all correctly done, and you can also paint something like this. The important thing is paint miles. It's like any sport or profession. You need to practice, you need to keep learning and putting in the hours. So I'm just applying some green foliage over what I have already on the mountain. And I'm just using the tip of the brush to touch the mountain. Again, don't take all the color that's there away. Some more foliage to the back mountain. Just keep in mind, as I said before, no amount of detailing is going to fix your painting if the basics are not done correctly. This is where I fix up that hill just behind those trees. It's behind the trees and the back mountain. So just getting that sorted out. That's a yellow and green value in there. And then adding some foliage to that as well. So the completed picture you will see at the beginning of this video. Pretty much completed. Just adding a few more highlights to these trees. But otherwise pretty much completed this piece. So folks, hope you've enjoyed watching me do this and mumble about it. Hope you learned something, and I hope you can apply it to your work, should you be painting. Nothing like keeping yourself busy for a couple of hours, splashing paint around on canvas. Now that in looking at this, now that the initial layers of the trees have dried, you can now go back and add additional coloring to that, because of the way that acrylics dry, they dry darker than what you actually put down onto the surface. So having done that, you can now go back and add those highlights back onto the trees, which assist in the 3D effect of the tree. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this. From me, Cappy. Have a great day, evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are. Stay safe, keep well. From me, Cappy. Cheers.